All right, so we got introduced the other night, pretty much, kind of overlapped with the catfish incident, which I thought you handled very funny. The poor production assistant is handed it to you, and then you stand there with the plate of catfish, and the refs come over. I thought that was hysterical. The tough part was the place didn't really get its full promo, because then you had to promo the tech. So how good is this place? As a guy who works for a professional food reviewer, like, how good is this place?
It's authentic. It's very well known in the state of Arkansas. If you want catfish, you go to the Catfish Hole in Fayetteville, and it's one of those local establishments here that it's everything on the wall has to do with the Razorbacks. A lot of teams, a lot of head coaches take the recruits there on their official visit because
Okay.
just the nostalgia of it. But the food is outstanding.
Yeah.
Now, is it healthy? Should you eat it every week? No. But in terms of fried catfish, hush puppies, coleslaw, their fried pies for dessert, the sweet tea, I'll put it up there with anybody's in the country.
It was the Catfish Hole, right?
Yeah,
Fayetteville?
the Catfish Hole. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So that broadcast was actually interesting. It was just you and Billis. You talked about it, no play-by-play. You've seen the Manning cast kind of blow up. We do stuff where it's more gambling oriented. Do you see like a Manning cast going into college basketball potentially? And even in like big games, like maybe somebody does it for the tournament? Like if you don't like the guys on CBS?
I think it's there for the taking for someone. Yeah, I mean that's the thought process that Jay and I went into with that game because I got thrown on it at the last second. I was coming from a game in Kentucky to get home, and that was the morning that all the flights got shut down. And I jumped in there, and well, the only thing we were told to do is just be two guys talking basketball. No one try to be the play-by-play. Don't worry about the promos and all that. Do your best with them, but just sit down and talk the game, talk ball, and it came really natural to us. I think we both have a great deal of respect for one another. We've had a lot of positive reviews about it from all different people, fans, other media members, people at the tops at ESPN. So I think there's something there because I know I really enjoy the Manning broadcast when I'm watching those football games. It's just another way to hear the game, view the game, see the game a little more casual way. So yeah, it was unique. I don't know the next time we'll do it, but I know it was a good game to do as well because Alabama at Arkansas, there's a lot of intensity in that building that night.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a heated rivalry for sure. But yeah, I mean I think you can learn a lot too. I think coaches can learn a lot more from the play-by-play of guys, because you and Billis obviously have forgot more about basketball than everybody knows. So watching that and the conversation it's definitely there. I agree with you. Kentucky's won 2 straight. You've done a couple of Kentucky games recently. Oscar Tshiebwe's been unbelievable. Is this 2 good games, or is Kentucky back?
It's 2 good games, and I think they're tracking to be back. Maybe not national championship good like a lot of us thought they would be in the preseason, but they seem to have found their footing, Rico, with the lineup of Case and Wallace at the point, Antonio Reeves, C.J. Frederick on the wings, the athletic jumping jack Toppin at the 4, and Tshiebwe at the 5. They've been really efficient with their offense against Tennessee and the other night against Georgia. So this is not a dynamic, explosive offensive team just in terms of their talent, their personnel. They're not going to be a team that averages 80. So I think they have figured out they have to find out ways to win the game in the high 60s, maybe get to the 70s. So how do you do that? Your defense has to be a whole lot better than it has been the first few months of the season for Kentucky, because a week ago at this time, prior to the Tennessee game, I was pretty strong about it on one of the broadcasts. They were the worst defensive team in the SEC. And I think they have kind of got that message from Coach Cal. I think they've tightened up that end of the floor a little bit. And then the other thing that helped them the other night, Georgia tried to single coverage Oscar Tshiebwe, and it blew up in their face. He had 34 points and
17,
27 rebounds. It was ridiculous what he did. So, yeah, but to answer your question, I do think Kentucky has found who they're going to be going forward. I think they found the 5 guys who are going to play major minutes. And now Sahvir Wheeler is probably going to be coming off the bench. How does he handle that role? How does he ignite the team when he comes in? Can he keep the dynamics going? All that stuff that coaches have to worry about. And that's what John Calipari is there for. But he's been in hard spots before as a head coach. He figures it out. And I think Kentucky's tracking the right way now.
So that's a perfect segue. What would you put Calipari's grade in terms of his tenure at Kentucky? So he's got the title, but he's also got an NIT. He's got a first-round exit. You know, he's had a ton of talent, hasn't always put it together. What would you put that grade, A to F?
I would probably give him the same grade he would probably give himself. I think it's borderline A minus B plus. You know, he's not going to say it's an A plus because I think Kentucky expects, you know, multiple national championships over a 11 or 12 year run, and they've had one. But you know, they were close a couple of years or several years ago in 2015. They were 38-0 and got upset by Wisconsin, and so they've been on the brink. They just haven't been there lately, and it's unusual for Kentucky to come off of a COVID year when they would not have qualified for the NCAA tournament with I think a 9-16 record. They were left out, and then last year they get bounced in the first round. So that's the most recent memories we have of Kentucky nationally is the last 2 years they haven't gotten it done. But you know, look at last year's team. They won 26-27 games. They had a terrific regular season, and they just got a bad matchup against St. Peter's in that opening round that exposed them not being able to guard the ball off the dribble. And it's happened to other teams before, but we all know about it when it happens to Kentucky. So, man, the number of pros that Cal has recruited, the recruiting class he has coming in next year is absolutely loaded up again. I think he's done a fantastic job because of this. At Kentucky as the head coach, if all you ever do is watch film and coach your team 24 hours a day, you are missing the mark, because that is a major, major high spot to sit in the state of Kentucky. He's the most visible guy in the state. What he's done for that state, raising money with different catastrophes that have hit that state over the recent years, raising money for flood victims, tornado victims, all the things that he does in that head coach's chair, I think factors into that grade as well. And he understands the business of college basketball as well or better than anybody. He's been out in front of a lot of different issues. And that Kentucky fan base, I know they get irritated with him at times, but at the end of the day, they probably don't want to trade him for too many other coaches.
Well, yeah, so I see that. I see all he's done. I'm not necessarily the biggest Calipari guy, like, at all. I'm not really a fan. But I'll give you this and take the bias away from it. If you're a donor putting up 25 grand for your seats and donations, which come with the seats, and donating all the money, and you're a booster, how do you feel on a night when 5 guys get drafted in the first round and he says that's the best night in Kentucky basketball history instead of when he hung a banner? Like, I think that's a fair criticism. Like, you're here to hang banners, not put guys in the pros. And he's into his thing of like, well, you know, we're a factory. No, if I'm a donor and an alum, like, you're here to hang banners. What do you put on that? Because I think it's a fair criticism.
And he got criticized for it. Man, that's part of being the head coach of Kentucky. You're responsible for the program. You're responsible for what you say. But I think if you have to step back and think, you know, we didn't win a national title that year, but who has better players than us, and who's trying to knock on the door any more than we are right now? They are no different than Duke or North Carolina or Indiana or Kansas or anybody. Like, you're not entitled to win a national championship anymore. There's too many good players out there that are spread around. There's too many good coaches. Recently, the NIL, the transfer portal, it has changed the game of not only college basketball, but, as you know, college football as well. And that just makes winning that much more difficult when everyone has equal talent now. And now you have the same issues as other coaches in the locker room, keeping guys happy, keeping them focused on the right thing. I mean, Cal called out the reigning National Player of the Year, Oscar Tshiebwe, last week, saying he's lost his edge. He hadn't been in the gym as much as he used to be. Well, this is the guy that's been reported making, you know, a couple $1 million through the NIL, the reigning National Player of the Year. Probably he was distracted at some point. So, man, there's so much to it. I get your point, and it's a valid point. And he had valid criticism on him when he made the comment. But I just think at the end of the day, the majority of fan base in Kentucky says we want our coach over your coach, and I think that's how you have to feel about it. If you're a true Big Blue Nation guy, I think the majority of them feel like that.
Yeah, I get that for sure, but I just think, you know, I don't know. All that stuff only goes so far if you're not hanging banners, and all that stuff is spread out for sure. I get it. You know, it's almost like you lose focus of it. You know, like when he starts making those comments, you lose focus. If they do, I know he's got the recruiting class next year. They're loaded. If they did move away, which I think is a low percentage, and you were Kentucky's AD or fan, what are the first 3 calls you're trying to make if you're Kentucky?
Well, I would call Calipari's wife, first of all, and say, please don't let him leave. Then I would call his son, Brad, and his daughters and talk to them and say, please talk some sense into your dad. We don't want to start this search. But if he just decides he wants to go off and start raising horses and racing them, and you had to find the next coach of Kentucky, I don't know. There's a great one right there in that league, Nate Oates at Alabama, who I'm sure is going to be high on the list at Texas. There's, Scott Drew at Baylor, the job he's done. Just you go on down the list. There's probably NBA guys that would have an interest in that job. Would Brad Stevens get back into coaching? So,
I say that name all the time. People tell me they're like, he's got a cushy spot. He did say a long time ago there was one job he wanted as a dream job. I wonder if it was the Celtics. I don't know if he ever came out and said that. He was an Indiana guy. I could have sworn it was going to be Indiana when that opened.
Right.
So
yeah. But I mean, it's what I say Kentucky is the best job in college basketball. I don't know. How do you view the best job? Because Kansas is a pretty dadgum good. North Carolina is a great job. Duke's a great job. UCLA is a great job. Arizona's a fantastic job. There's a lot of really, really good jobs out there, but it is one of them. And that fan base, I think, is different than any fan base out there. I say that because I coached at Kentucky for 2 years. I felt the pressure. I remember seeing the passion, how important that basketball program is to that state. So it does make it unique. They would have their pick, I think, of, you don't want to say about anybody out there. Bill Self's not going to leave Kansas to go to Kentucky, but a couple of those names I threw out there, starting with Nate Oates, would be high on my list.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I don't think he's going to leave. I think they give him a little bit more. But I think he's moved on from different spots. This is obviously a dream. I could see him maybe being like, you know what, Texas is a great spot too. So you never know.
Yeah.
All right, this one is from your colleague when I interviewed him last year, and he gave a great answer. How many teams right now can win the national title?
12.
Okay.
And I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I can tell you who the 12 are if I had time to scroll back through. So just do this. Go back and look at the week 6 AP poll. The national champion since 2004, I believe, has been ranked inside the top 12 during the week 6 poll every year since 2004. Okay, so I would start with that list. That's a pretty good streak going right now. So what it tells us is that poll now is after we've had Maui, Battle for Atlantis, preseason NIT, PK 85, all those tournaments. It's after the Big Ten ACC Challenge. We've had high quality games now 6 weeks into the college basketball season, and these 12 teams have weathered that initial storm. Good games, big games, all those things, and your national champion is somewhere tucked away inside those top 12. Now, the obvious ones that are in there off the top of my mind: Purdue, Houston, Kansas, Alabama, Tennessee, UCLA, I think, was in that group. That's where your national champion is hidden right now behind the numbers, somewhere in that group of 12. I don't think there's more than that right now anyways.
We'll go through the teams in a second, but I've also seen something and tracked it. The last week of January, Final Four teams are hitting at about a 60% clip. If you're in the top 10 in the last week of January, to file that one away too. UNC. Can UNC win a title? Could
they win a title? Yes, certainly. But they've got to they got to figure out what worked for them last year when they got on a run. They weren't in the top 12, so it goes right against what I just said. But you can't discount Armando Bacot, the guard play, what they were able to do last year. I say that because a couple of years ago at this stage, what is it, January the 18th or 19th? I guess I could look at a calendar, I lose track of it. But 2 years ago at this point, we knew the best two teams were Baylor and Gonzaga. It was unquestioned. It's just a matter of when they're going to play each other in the NCAA tournament, and it worked out in the finals. We don't have that now. There's no one out there that can come on your show or call me and say, these are the best two teams. We're just waiting on them to play. It's not there. Now there's a group of them that are really, really good, but we don't have those two exceptionally good / great teams that have separated from everyone. So I think it seems like we say it every year, man, this thing is wide open, but it really feels like this year that there's not that monster sitting out there, with a possible exception of Purdue. because they have a dude that looks different than anybody else on the floor. And his name's Zach Edey. And there's no answer for him right now in college basketball. So if he's on the floor, he's healthy, knock on wood, doesn't sprain an ankle, he plays all the way through, someone's going to have to beat Purdue to win that title.
Yeah, and then it's interesting. You start looking at some of these teams who are at the top, right? Painter's never been to a Final Four. I know UConn's in a free-for-all. Hurley, I think, is a great coach. I like Hurley a lot. Never been to the second weekend. Rick Barnes hasn't had phenomenal success in the NCAA tournament. These are all guys who are going to be top seeds. You know, even Oates. I love Oates because he was at Buffalo. He made those appearances. Yeah. You know, and he's only made the Sweet 16 once. I think there's a lot of guys, you know, they're going to be leading ships of high seeds that don't have a ton of success. But I think maybe we're shifting a little bit of relying on, and you've seen it in the game, Krzyzewski, Boeheim, you know, Jay Wright. Like, you're not really betting on coaches anymore with the 30 years of success. It's a new young man's game. So it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, everybody won their first one at some point. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to win your first one at some point. And there's a bunch of guys on that list that haven't won it yet. But you also, you know, it's hard to discount the value of a guy like Bill Self on the sidelines, or a guy like Mark Few. Mark Few hasn't won one, but man, he's been in a lot of big games during the course of his career. Nothing's going to catch him by surprise in that NCAA tournament. But you're right. You're not having to play through a guy that's a future, you know, statue built about college basketball of him on the sidelines right now. Those are huge names that we lost. Jay Wright, Coach K, Roy Williams. Those are big losses.
Yeah,
you know,
and Izzo and Boeheim are on the back end too. You know, so
yeah, absolutely they are.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. One coach, dead or alive, in your lifetime, you got one game you got to go win. Who are you putting on the seat?
One coach that I have to go win. I'm not going to go dead. I'm going to stay with just to cut my list down.
Well, we could do a dead bracket and an alive.
Okay, it's hard for me to go against Bill Self right now. It really is. I say that because, you know, you look at last year in that championship game, they trailed 16 points at half.
Yeah.
And great coaches fix the problem right now. They don't have to wait till after the game and watch the film and figure out what we should have done. And that just spoke volumes to me about how good he really is. And I had that team in Atlantis this year. They lost to Tennessee in the finals. I had them when they went into Missouri and just blew out Missouri, just blew them out of the water on their home floor. And I see the adjustments. I see him out of timeouts. He and I were on the same staff together at Oklahoma State for a year under Eddie Sutton. I know how he's wired, how he thinks. If I had to pick one guy right now to coach my team going forward, or for one game, it'd be hard for me to pass up on him. It really would. Past coaches, one game, you know, Coach K would be a great one. You know, his motivation, his understanding, I think the confidence and the belief that he puts in his guys, or he did put in his guys in big time moments. I think there's great value in that. And he's obviously a phenomenal coach, the winningest guy we've ever had, but his ability to lead and get people prepared for big moments in life, in games, I would have to go with him. Not saying that he's died. I'm saying a past coach.
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you with Self. I was holding Kansas last year to win it, which probably made me even on all the years that I picked Kansas to win, including the year Perry Ellis took 5 shots in 2016, which I'll still never understand against Villanova. But I'll go Self and Majerus against you on that. I think
Majerus, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, his book was unbelievable. I watched him when I was younger, and then went back and, you know, watched some stuff. But I just think he did the most with the least, if that makes sense.
You know, I got to know Rick. I got to know Rick really, really well when he was out in the Mountain West. Because when I first started the ESPN, that was kind of my main league. Maybe it was the WAC at the time, but you know, BYU, Utah, UNLV, Wyoming, those teams were rolling out there for a while, and we had a lot of Utah on Big Monday games. And I became a good friend with him. We talked a lot of ball, man. We had a lot of dinners after games that lasted a long time because Coach liked to eat. We talked a lot of ball, and I learned an awful lot from that guy in terms of just some terminology, and it's still used today. And you're right. And his preparation, his mind for the game was as good as we've had.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think has changed the most since your playing days in Arkansas?
Oh, wow. Probably how you have to coach teams right now. There's well, back in the day when I was there, you never questioned a coach over anything. It was yes sir, no sir, and I played for a hard nosed guy, Eddie Sutton, and we actually lost in Hawaii. I think it's called the Hawaii Invitational back then. I don't know, but we lost to Georgia Tech. Played 3 games in 3 days. Our last game we lost to Georgia Tech and Mark Price, and went straight to the Honolulu airport. Flew all night, landed in Dallas like 5:30 a.m. Caught a connecting flight. There was no chartering back then, and then flew from Dallas to Fayetteville. Got to Fayetteville about 7:30 the next morning after being up all night, after playing 3 games in a row and losing 2 out of 3. Went straight to the practice gym and practiced 3 times that day, and never questioned it.
No.
Never said anything about it. It was like, we didn't play well. We got what we have coming to us. We're going to practice 3 times the day we get back after flying all night. Those days are gone. That's what's changed the most, is how you're coaching. And it's good. Like, you can't wear people down mentally or physically. So I see coaching these days really taking into account, student athletes with their time and how much preparation we do with them on the floor, as opposed to their mental preparation, which is huge. That's probably the biggest part of the game. Is still fairly similar, to be honest with you. I know we've added the 3-point line since I played, but the bottom line truths of the game: taking care of the ball, fundamental man-to-man defense or zone defense, doesn't matter what you're playing. Are you guarding the ball? How are you doing when the ball's on the glass, boxing off, rebounding, not turning the ball over? That part of the game hasn't changed. It's the other parts of it the most, Rico, for me.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask too, in terms not almost personal management, but the style of play. You still say it's pretty similar?
Well, the game's a lot faster, and the 3-point line, accelerated that. The shot clock, we didn't have a shot clock when I played. We could hold the ball if we wanted to with a 6-4 lead. Although we didn't do it, we had a lot of long possessions. So, and I think the talent overall is really has really elevated. Excuse me for a second.
No, it's all good.
My battery died. The talent level overall is, it's crazy what some of these athletes can do now at the college level. And I think the size and the explosiveness of athletes. Now, we had some great ones back then. I played against Michael Jordan's team at North Carolina when I was at Arkansas. There's not a more explosive athlete out there right now than he, but I think there's more of them because of all the training, all the progress we've made with, how to develop athletes, in their formative 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade years. So the game is much more athletic. It's much bigger, much longer, much faster. But in terms of how you should play the game, that shouldn't change. That has not changed as much.
Absolutely. I got 2 more. I'll get you out of here.
All right, buddy.
So we saw some, there's some blue blood struggles this year. I don't think Duke is necessarily lights out. Carolina was the #1 team in the country. They fell. Arkansas had some up and downs the past couple of years, but made the two Elite Eights, in an up and down season. Carolina last year, they're an 8 seed, get to the final game. Who's kind of flying under the radar right now as a team that can make a run that people are sleeping on or is going up and down?
Yeah, it's think across the country right now.
Does Creighton still have the title? Or does Creighton still have the chips?
I think they got enough chips. They put them all on and play them the right way. Yeah, that's UConn. UConn has taken a hit right now. I don't think there's a lot of people that believe in UConn going forward. I still do, because I saw them in person at Florida back in November. I know what they've got. Now they've hit a rough patch, and Hurley's, I think he's got the capability of figuring this thing out. But when you just start getting on a neutral floor, and if they can correct some of their problems right now and make sure the right guys are taking the shots, that combo inside of Sonogo and the backup Klingon is a handful. Man, are those 2 guys good together. So I haven't got to watch them a lot recently because I'm in the SEC, but I wouldn't completely discard UConn right now making a deep, deep run.
Okay. And then I'll get you out of here on this. I'm not a huge fan of comparisons, but you obviously watch the broadcast, and a lot of guys, know that the secrets of, or that I should say, there is no secret. They're going to the NBA draft after this year. What kind of comparisons, or who do you compare Brandon Miller to? And is he the best player in the country right now?
I think he's a healthy version of Paul George when Paul George was healthy. He's all of 6'9". He's faster than he looks in person. He's smooth. His jump shot is not even an issue. It is automatic. Would I like it to be a little bit higher on his release? Talking to some scouts, they say the same thing. But if he doesn't fix his shot, he's still going to be okay. And he's learned to drive the ball with some strength and some contact. He has a plan. He thinks like a pro. He works like a pro. I'm with you. I think he's arguably the best player right now we have in the college game overall. Now, Edey is ridiculously different.
Yes.
But he doesn't have the versatility of Miller. I think Brandon Miller will be the first freshman taken in the draft.
Yeah.
I think he's taken ahead of the kid at Arkansas, Nick Smith, who I'm not sure he's going to come back right now. He's on the West Coast, supposedly training with his trainer with a little bit of a knee issue. I think he will be the first college player taken. I would have no argument with him doing that at all. He is the real deal. He's that good.
National champion, if you had to pick it right now.
I'm going to go with I'm going to pick Purdue because I think Zach Edey is that much of a problem. He's that much of a problem. You cannot single coverage him. You can't double team him because he's 7'4", and your double team is too small, and he's a tremendous passer. And those guards are young, but, man, those guys are good. Now, he makes those guards better than they probably are.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't matter. He's still the reason. He's still the reason. So I say that saying he's the one thing when the tournament would start that no one would have an answer for. So I would go with them right now.
Yeah. The only thing I'll put a kind of an asterisk on is that they don't officiate him great. Like I heard a broadcaster say he gets fouled on every single play, and I do think in the tournament they're calling more fouls, which will help him out. But last year, Painter had a full week to prepare for St. Peter's with Trevion Williams and Zach Edey inside, and he couldn't get it going.
Yeah. So when I watch them play a handful of times, one thing I do think is if they're up against a very athletic team, Alabama, a real athletic driving team, can they stay in front of the ball and keep Edey from having to come over and rotate, maybe pick up some fouls? He goes to the bench. Now it's anybody's ball game. But if you're a run set plays, a lot of passing, you only have maybe one guy to get in the paint, Purdue's going to win the game. It'd take an athletic, driving, fast team similar to St. Peter's.
Yeah.
I think Alabama's a much better version of St. Peter's this year to probably beat those guys.
Fair enough. Jimmy, I can't thank you enough. I'll be looking forward to Saturday. Thanks for the time. Enjoy it. We'll touch base at the end of the season for sure.
I would love to. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jimmy. Take it easy.